Welcome, everyone. My name is Crystal Levine, and I am the South Carolina PTA Compliance and Success Chair. And basically, it's my job to help everyone do the things that they need to do and figure out how to do it and when to do it and why we do it. So that's what we're here for tonight. All right, so what we'll be discussing today is what is compliance and why do we have to do it? What do units need to do to remain in good standing, and where do I go for help? As we go through these slides, you guys, you can unmute if you want to. You can put questions in the chat. You can, I just want to make sure that everybody leaves here with the information that they need. If you want to hang on at the end, if you feel like you have a longer question, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording at some point and then just kind of take the individual situations if you want to wait till that. I just want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable tonight getting all of their questions answered. So compliance just means fulfilling official requirements, and PTA has requirements for compliance from several different sources. By and large, the biggest portion comes from our 501c3 designation with the IRS. And these are IRS requirements. Your insurance policy has several requirements, and we have included those major ones into our compliance documents, including our financial review, just to make sure that everyone's protected and that they don't get into a situation where they need to file a claim and they're not covered because they weren't doing something they were supposed to. And then there are a few that South Carolina PTA have added ourselves, and those are mostly for ease of doing business, and you'll see what I mean when we get to some of those. Okay, so back to the 501c3 designation that I mentioned before. That just means that it means two things. It means that that the donations that your PTA receives is tax deductible, and it means that we don't have to pay income tax on the money that that the unit does make. So instead of making you guys, it's kind of an arduous process to apply for a 501c3 designation. And there's a lot of things that you have to prove and agree to. So we've kind of streamlined that process for you. So what happens is South Carolina PTA takes on that responsibility. And we have a group exemption, which means that all of the subordinates, which all of our local units, are able to be covered and have that 501c3 designation extended to them. However, we have to send a list of our units and we guarantee that those units are following the 501c3 rules. And so in order to be able to say, yes, XYZ PTA is under our group exemption and is that they're following the rules, we have some requirements that we ask you to submit to us so that we can verify that those rules are actually being followed. Another really important reason that you'll see as we go on how all of this makes sense, but your PTAs, when you take memberships, for example, you're taking funds that don't belong to you and you're holding them for just a little bit. And some of our compliance requirements helps the process go smoother for transferring those funds to their appropriate owners. And like I said, we'll come back to that. Insurance we require insurance. That's a South Carolina PTA imposed requirement for the protection of officers and members. And then some things are just for ease of transacting business, like put your officer's contact information into give back so that we can talk to you easier. What we call our compliance checklist is well, there's lots of things, but we have combined it into a good standing checklist so that you guys know if you do these things, there's 9 things on the list. If you're doing these things, then you know that that you've met the compliance requirements, the basic requirements. The list is in your bylaws, and as we update the template for the local units bylaws, that that list gets updated. So, but you can find it in your current bylaws. Because to try to make things simpler for everybody, we manage everything through givebacks. And I actually wanted to show you guys, I'll do it individually as we get to each thing, but how to submit the required documentation, or how to pay dues, or how to enter officers. So I'll at least show you where and the basic steps. And if you have trouble, you can always reach out for help. And just as a requirement, I mean, as a reminder, once the documentation is submitted, most of the items are reviewed and approved by South Carolina PTA, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So, you didn't upload your lunch takeout menu instead of your financial review or whatever. Okay, so these are the 9 things that we're going to talk about tonight. Every unit has to have bylaws. Every unit has to input their members into givebacks. That's how it's communicated to us, and to National PTA who your members are. Officers need to be input into givebacks with their contact information, including principals. Each local unit needs to have insurance, and we have some minimum amounts that we require just for protection. We added that to give clarity to the units because they weren't sure what they needed a lot of times. So we put some minimums on there just to give everybody an idea. A financial review is required every year to make sure that those financial requirements are being taken care of. Even though we don't pay income tax, we still have to file a federal tax return. There's a budget in order for the board to operate, the general membership has to approve a budget, allowing and giving authority to the officers and the board of directors to spend their money. And so we ask that be uploaded with the minutes showing that it was approved. There's some Secretary of State requirements. We're not going to go into huge detail. There's a separate training related to just the Secretary of State that if you missed it earlier this month, you can access that on our website, but we will go over how to submit the documentation and then submitting dues, and we'll go into some more details. There was a question about whether the 990 is in lieu of thanks, Kristen. Okay. The 990 is the return. That's correct. Okay, so bylaws. Bylaws is a 501c3 requirement. It is a requirement to function as an organization, and it is the organizing document. And in order to make sure that all the required clauses are in the bylaws, we provide a template. You can get that at scpta.org. As a reminder, they need to be approved by the board of directors, and signed, and then also approved by general membership. Those also, to make sure that we're doing things exactly above board and the way they were intended, those have to be approved by South Carolina PTA. And the current process is that those are email after you get all the way through the general membership vote and approval, the minutes approving those, as well as the signed copy of the bylaws, are emailed to bylaws@scpta.org for approval, and then we will upload those to your giveback site so that you can have access to them with this approved signature on it. So currently those are being updated every 3 years, and we are working on a new process to move that to being updated only as changes are made to the template. More information on that to come, but I kind of wanted to preview that for you. But as it's being discussed in the chat right now, bylaws can be updated by general membership as often as you need to. And there is some language on what those votes need to look like to make changes to the bylaws. So members. All right. So the requirement for members is that all members are input into givebacks. So what I want to do is pull up a screen here. When you log in, this is just a school in the state, but if you log into your giveback site, this will be your school, your dashboard, and it it along here, if you're an officer and you're listed as an admin, then you'll have access to this dashboard. If you do not have access to this dashboard when you log into givebacks, or if you don't know what your giveback site is, if you're having problems logging in, hang on at the end and let me know, and we will get you worked out. But on the left over here, you can see that you have lots of options, but we are specifically talking about memberships. As we said here, that they have to be input into givebacks, and you can do that in multiple ways. So under the memberships and manage members, you can add a cash or check member, and you can see what kind of you can select the type of membership that you're inputting. You type in all of their information, and then it saves and goes into your givebacks member list. The other way to do that is to have them join directly through your giveback store. So if you'll see. Okay, so membership. So if they join directly from here, let's say I'm a parent and I want to join, I type in all of my stuff, I add it to my cart, I pay, I check out, everything automatically goes into givebacks. Up here, there's a method here to export a CSV file, and it's a spreadsheet. CSV is just a basic spreadsheet. So export CSV just gives you the list. Import members, you download this template, it's a CSV file. You can fill in a bunch of members at once and then re-upload it back here, and it will import all of those members into the store for you. As a reminder, and I guess as a warning, this works well, but you have to do some checks before you upload it to make sure that the phone number and email address are not duplicated for any of the members. Okay, back to members. So as we mentioned before, we were talking about funds held for others. There is when a member joins a PTA, a local PTA, they are joining 3 organizations. They're joining the local unit, they're also joining South Carolina PTA, and they're also joining national PTA. So when dues are paid, well, it's one thing. So the memberships are entered, and we transfer those records to all 3 organizations. But when they're entered, that is also used to automatically calculate dues, which we will get to in just a moment when we get to the dues section. If you have taken memberships in, and they all need to be entered by October 1st so that you can pay the dues and meet that dues deadline. And we'll get to dues in just a minute. And then there is a credit card. So there's the fee added onto membership when paying through givebacks instead of cash. There is a fee, and you can set your store up to either eat those fees or to pass them on. So right here, you can either pass the processing fees on to your payers, or you can cover them yourself. So I think it comes out to so if you have for example, if you have $7 as your dues for the year, if you pass it on, if they choose to join online, it turns out to be like $7.36 or something like that. So you can decide how you want to handle that. It's not a huge expense, but someone has to pay it somewhere along the way. Same with Square or with any other way you take electronic payments. Officers. So the requirement is that local units input local unit officers, including the principal, with names and contact information by July 1st or within 15 days of elections if held after July 1st. Those it's a way for us to keep a record of the unit leadership, and it's also how we communicate with local units. We get So you'll get emails from us, notices of things happening or reminders of things that are due. We share opportunities for local units awards and things like that. And then also, remember, South Carolina PTA is we have our own general membership, and that is you. That is the officers of all of our local units. And so when we have to vote on things, just like you do, we send out those votes through givebacks to our local unit officers. Okay, so I'm going to pull up here. I'm just going to show you quickly where to update the officers. It's under compliance, and you click update officers, and you can click add officer here. And so you can select which office it is. We ask that you put all of your board members on here so that everyone is getting the communications that they need. But it matters. It matters what you list the person as. Make sure that's correct, because some communications only go to elected officers. Some communications only go to principals, for example, or to presidents. But also, there are some permissions that certain officers have within givebacks that others do not. So, but this is where you add it. And just so you know, here, I'll show you. If I start typing, in the last name or email, and that person has been a member before or is listed as a contact in your organization, you don't have to retype everything. Something important to note here is that this button right here, this gives them the authority. If it's on, it gives them the authority to have access to the dashboard. If this is turned off, then they do not have access to the dashboard. When they go to the Giveback site, they get to the store just like everybody else. Next, so we just spent a lot of time talking about insurance earlier and the different options and things, but the compliance rule is that all units maintain liability with a minimum of $2 million and bond a minimum of $10,000 insurance. The certificate has to be uploaded by October 1st. We get lots of questions about effective dates of policies because some people have effective dates in June. Some people have effective dates in November or March or whenever. And what we're saying is between the beginning of the year and October 1st, just upload a policy that's effective during that time. So, for example, if it's September 15th and I'm taking care of this requirement and our policy renews in November, that's fine. This year it's in force and you have proof of insurance. Next year we'll catch you the next year's round and we'll see that there was no lapse in coverage. Okay, so is it better so back to the officers, is it better to use personal email addresses or can we use the position's email? Yeah, so ideally it's better to use the personal email addresses for givebacks. I understand the desire to set up like a PTA treasurer, an XYZ treasurer email account so that it can be transferred from one person to the next. The problem with that is that it can sometimes be hard to change the name that's associated with that email. And we need you to put the person's actual name so we know who the officers are. So it's a continuing conversation that we're having with givebacks to try to be able to address that. I will tell you there is a way that I've seen, this is kind of a sneak approach, but I've seen people list their organization email as a co-president so that both email addresses get the communication. But okay, so the financial review requirement is that each unit conducts an annual financial review and uploads the review and year-end financial report to givebacks by November 15th. Why November 15th? Because that is kind of our that's the financial deadline the IRS has set. And so the Secretary of State has also set that as a financial deadline. So we have also adopted that as our financial deadline. The checklist is a form that has lots of questions, and it covers things like some of the things she was mentioning in the insurance portion, like, are there two signers on every check? Was there a reconciliation done every month? Were there two people present when counting cash or having custody of cash? Things like that. So the financial review checklist can be found at scpta.org. And there's also a financial report that is also attached to that, and it outlines and documents the income and expenditures for that unit for the year. As a reminder, the financial review should be accepted with a vote by the board of directors. If there are some questions that we get regularly. So one thing is, what happens if we have comments or things that we need to change for the next year? That is okay. It is not no one's taking away your charter because you had a check that only had one signature, or you had whatever the situation is. What we ask is that you put policies and procedures in place to avoid making that mistake in the coming year. Okay, let me show you where this gets uploaded into GiveBack. So under compliance, almost everything else goes here, almost. But under compliance, there's this enter submissions section, and you'll see here that it gives lots of options. And if we scroll down to financial review and checklist, so it requires the financial review and the checklist and a copy of the year-end financial report. So that means whatever your year-end financial report happened, whatever that shows, all of your income and expenses, it's a little more detailed. It should be a little more detailed than the form that you're filling out at the end. Okay. You'll notice here, though, that we've talked about 3 different documents, but there's only one upload place here. So we ask that if at all humanly possible, if you don't know, that you find some help combining those into one document. This will come up in other areas also, but it can sometimes be a problem for people because something will get rejected because we only have the first page. So what if we had a change of treasurer and president? Who does the review and who approves? The financial review is conducted by either a CPA that you pay or 3 people who were not signers on the account during the year that the financial review covers. So, for example, if there's a brand new treasurer who comes in who had nothing to do with the books and was not a signer on the account last year, they can be on the financial review. And actually, it would be suggested that they would be on the financial review committee so that they can see the process and kind of see what they're working toward at the end of the year. You will, when you upload the review and you upload your financial documents, it's only for the year that it's covered. So your year-end financial report would only cover July 1st to June 30th of that year. So when accepted by the board of directors, literally it's you don't need to go into a ton of detail. If they list a whole page of problems or things that were marked no on the financial checklist, you should give a summary that you'll see on the bottom of the checklist. It says things like, we found the records to be, and I forgot the exact words right now, but it's something like in good condition, needs help, and was unable to be verified or something like that. So you'll need to report that to the board, and there'll be a motion to accept the financial review, and then there will just be a vote. It still needs to be accepted. Yes, the board needs to know what the outcome of the financial review is, and that needs to be, that was shared, needs to be recorded in your minutes. It's a lot more fun to share a positive financial review than it is to share problems. All right. Okay. So federal tax return. The requirement is that local units file a federal tax return for the previous year and uploads proof of submission or extension by November 15th. So as mentioned before, the federal tax return is the 990, 990EZ, or 990N. I put a table on here to give you guys an idea of what the requirements are. If you go to a CPA, often they will do a 990EZ, even if you aren't required to file one. If your average gross receipts over the last 3 years is less than $50,000, then you do not need to file a 990EZ. The 990N is, I don't know, it takes maybe 5 minutes to submit yourself online. It's very simplified, and they're not worried about all the details. 990EZs are a lot more complicated. If you have a 990, or if you're required to file a 990, then it is very in-depth and you have to disclose all sorts of information. So definitely would recommend a CPA be involved in those discussions. This question comes up a lot. Our CPA filed an extension. We're not going to have it by November 15th. That's fine. We need to, you can just upload that you filed an extension and you will meet that compliance requirement. Something else, notice that it says proof of submission. We don't need your actual document. We just need to show that it was submitted to the IRS. 501c3 organizations, all of their tax returns are available on the IRS's website. So if we ever wanted to see your actual 990EZ or that you filed a 990N, we can go onto the IRS website and see that. Granted, they're about a year behind, so it takes a while for them to get everything uploaded, but it shows up eventually. The requirement for the budget is that by November 15th, the local unit submits a copy of the budget and the minutes from a general membership meeting approving the budget. This is a great time for me to give my favorite spiel about authority. So the general membership has the responsibility for all decision making for the unit. That means all the members, everybody together. But they delegate that authority in 2 important ways. The first way is by electing officers. They choose those 4 people, or however many are elected, but usually those 4 people, president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and say, we trust these 4 people with the ability to make decisions for us and to make decisions in our best interest. The other way that they delegate authority is by approving a budget. So by approving a budget, they give the board of directors authority to spend the membership's money in specific ways. So it's important to remember that board members are entrusted with those funds from the general membership, and they're only allowed to spend what's in the budget, but it's not their money to spend, right? They are being entrusted with that responsibility by the general membership. So the technical rule is that no money is authorized to be spent in a fiscal year until there is a budget approved. So most PTAs approve a budget in the spring for the upcoming year. Some PTAs approve a interim budget to get through the first few months of the year until you can get a full budget worked out and voted on. So those are, but the important part is that that has to be approved by general membership before spent. Last thing I wanted to mention about the budget is the cost of goods sold. We get this question a lot. So on your budget, you will have income and you will have an expense, for example. And so if you're going to sell spiritware, you have to buy this spiritware and then you have to sell it, right? So you're going to have an expense for when you bought it and or an expenditure, and then you're going to have income from where you sell it to somebody else. Sometimes, like especially if you do, let me give you an example. Our local PTA did a fern sale. We sold ferns in the spring, and you're just guessing how many you're going to sell, right? But when you get to the signups and you've sold way more than you budgeted to spend, cost of goods sold kind of moves it into another it's a little bit different than the rest of your expenses in that you have to adjust for what you need to buy to cover what you have promised to sell. I hope I'm making sense with that. But in this situation, if we thought we would sell 100 ferns and we sold 200 ferns, you have to go over your allotted budget because you have to buy those 200 ferns knowing that you will make it up in the income. Okay. But that question comes up. So cost of goods sold kind of has a slightly different rules when it comes to that than the rest of the expenses. Oh, I skipped one. So updates to the budget. You always hear this, everyone says this, the budget is just your best guess, and that's absolutely true. But remember that whole authority discussion. So it's a two-edged thing. So you don't know exactly what you're going to need. But we recommend that you do a budget update with your general membership board first, then general membership. Halfway through the year, our units usually do them in January, for example, to kind of evaluate what you thought you were going to do. You're halfway through the year, you say, well, we didn't do as well on this, we did better on that, we had leftover money here, whatever it is, so that a budget is just your best guess, and you have more information to make a best guess halfway through the year. Secretary of State. Again, I said I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on this. There's an entire training dedicated to Secretary of State, but the compliance requirement is that a local unit registers and files any required documents with the South Carolina Secretary of State by November 15th. So the Secretary of State requires that all charities or nonprofits in South Carolina register with them. So if you have your own EIN, you need to be registered. However, they have extended kind of an exemption to some PTAs in certain circumstances. But either way, you need to upload something by November 15th. If you are required to file with the Secretary of State, there's two things that are due by November 15th. You need to register for the upcoming year, and you need to file an annual financial report for the previous year. Both of those are due to Secretary of State by November 15th. What we're saying is we want proof that you have submitted your required documents to them, uploaded to givebacks by November 15th. If you do not have to file with them or register with them, then there is a form that you sign that says we are not required, and it needs to be uploaded also. So as a reminder, here in this same compliance submissions section, this is where you upload the budget and the minutes approving the budget. It's where you upload your 990, your insurance, Secretary of State registration is here. So you can see it says units not, okay, this right here refers to the registration exemption statement and gives you directions to where to find it. It needs to be signed and then uploaded here as well. If there is nothing uploaded, then we assume that you are delinquent, right? That you have not followed the compliance requirements. That is correct. We do not need to, you do not need to give us your updated budgets. We trust you to be able to handle those. Good point, Kristen, about insurance. Make sure that your certificate that you upload shows your amounts and dates, because that's one of the main things that we're verifying that you've met the requirement. Okay. We are so close, guys. Almost done. Okay, so for related to dues, the South Carolina PTA and national portion of dues paid by each member shall be set aside and remitted to SCPTA through givebacks by October 1st, December 1st, March 1st, and June 30th of each year. I mentioned this before. So when they pay, when a member pays dues, $1.25 of those dues belong to South Carolina PTA, and $2.25 of those dues belong to national PTA. When you take control of that money from each member, that money does not belong to you. So it does not go onto your budget as income and an expense, because that artificially inflates both of those numbers, because that money does not belong to you. You're just holding it until you can pass it along to its actual recipient. And in this case, it's South Carolina PTA and national PTA. So we have tried to make it simple for you by letting you pay us, and then we pay national for you. So let me show you where to do that. Under memberships over here on this bottom section, it says remit state dues. And there will, if this is blue, it says you do not owe anything for the 24-25 school year, or whatever it says. It says, if it's blue and it says you don't owe anything. But every time you add a member, it will calculate what you owe for state and national dues, and it will display it here. So for this unit, you owe South Carolina PTA $14 for 4 members. Okay. So if you are logged in and you are the president, the co-president, or the treasurer listed in as an officer, you have a button right here. I think it says ACH, make ACH payment, I think is what it says. So there is you can just click that button. If your unit is new and has never set up the bank account, it will walk you through the steps of how to enter your bank information. If you did this last year and you're just a new officer, when you get here and you press it, you authorize the payment. I think there's a fee, there's a small fee associated every time you make the payment. I think it used to be $1. I feel like maybe it went up recently. But every time you make that payment, there's a fee. You'll need to record that as an expense for bank fees in your books. But the other money is recorded in your books, but not in your budget. Okay, so if you get to this page and there's no button here and it says that you owe money, then you're not listed as a president, treasurer, or co-president. You can also go to previous years here. So you can see there are no outstanding, that's what it says. There are no outstanding state dues for your unit for this school year. If there were outstanding dues, it would show up yellow here and you would be able to pay it. If you go past that, well, there's not any here, but if you went back more than a year, I think it says something like contact your state PTA to make payment or something like that. But you can look through every year and see what the payments were like. Oh, $2. I was right. It's $2 fee now. It used to be $1. So last year it went up. Okay. Let's see. We also get questions about setting up the bank account. So let me go back to givebacks. You'll see when I said you put you enter your bank account information here, if it's not already set up, that is different than your Stripe account, okay? Your Stripe account is connected to your store. And the store, having Stripe account set up allows your unit to accept payments for purchases made in the store for memberships or for products, spiritware, whatever it is that you're taking money for. So the um, this is, but and the givebacks does not handle any of that money. That's all processed through Stripe, a back end. It's their own financial management company, and you have to have a Stripe account connected to be able to process credit card payments. That is completely different from the ability to pay South Carolina PTA for dues. There's some questions about dues, and I wanted to mention that, oh, Kristen just put it in there, that national PTA dues are going up, effective in 2025. So not for this school year, but effective July 1st of 2025, the national PTA dues will go from $225 to $325. So if your unit currently has $5 dues, starting next year, $450 will go to state and national dues. So we would recommend that you plan accordingly and consider what you want your new dues to be. For example, this unit that I was showing you, they raised their dues. It used to be $7, now it's $10 in anticipation of that increase, just to go ahead and get ready for that change. Okay. All right. So we are here to help you. We are here to, none of this is left to you to handle on your own. There's lots of information on scpta.org. There is, the Give Back site has lots of information. And actually there's a little, let me show you. There's down here, there's a little question mark. So there's a help center. It gives, how do I do these things, right? What do I need to do? And it actually, so like that was those are about Stripe. If I go to here, we'll do this one. And then I click the help center. It starts giving you compliance suggestions. So depending on the page you're on, it will give you suggested articles to find the answers to your questions. But absolutely all the time, I'm here to help, and I put Kristen and Jen's contact information on here also. They are both on this call and are available to answer questions related to, obviously you would send questions related to financial matters to Kristen. Anything related to membership goes to Jen, and I'm here for general help. Okay, so all of this stuff we've talked about is basically related to you're just a new officer and your unit is fine. They've been operating just fine. You just are learning how to do it. But if you're not in good standing, if you came into this position not in good standing, you have things missing from previous years, you have outstanding dues, you have any of those things, you are not alone. We are here to walk you through this the best that we can and to help you make a plan. So you can, at the end of this call, just hang on. If we can handle it now, you can email me, but let's make an appointment and get your questions answered and get your unit back into compliance. I didn't put this on here, but I should mention, so a unit who is continually not in compliance is in danger of losing their charter. So the ability to operate as a PTA. So that would be, it would be first suspended and then revoked eventually. But if it any time, but we are working with you, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that to make it feel threatening at all. I'm just saying that we get questions on what happens if I don't do this stuff. Well, that's where it's headed. So we want to make sure that you have all of your documentation taken care of. You know how to create it or to upload it or to find it or to do it. And then we'll walk you through those steps and help you make a plan.